Good morning, lovelies. Today we're going to be talking about 10 examples of toxic male characters in science fiction and fantasy. In the interest of fair play, I have included a mix of protagonists, villains, and characters who fall somewhere in between. Many of these characters' toxicity stems specifically from toxic masculinity, which is an unhealthy obsession with masculinity that causes the person to hurt themselves and those around them, mentally, emotionally, and physically. I've talked about that before on my channel, and it is not to be confused with healthy masculinity, which is not that. Other characters on this list are just jerks. And yes, I will be doing a video on toxic female characters in SFF at some point, so just chill. Before we get started, remember to subscribe to the channel for more videos on science fiction, fantasy, and horror through a feminist lens. I have a Discord server exclusive to patrons on my Patreon community, so if you want to join our discussions and also get early access to these videos as well as some other free goodies, check out that link, it is in the description. And now, on to the 10 examples of total douchebags. Number 1, Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. This one is pretty obvious, and that's why he's the villain. Violent, domineering, and is absolutely obsessed with a woman who has less than zero interest in him. Now, when he realizes that she wants nothing to do with him, does he bow out? No! He decides that the rational thing to do is to whip up the town in a frenzy and lead an angry mob to break into his romantic rival's house to kill him. Actually, no. First, what he does is try to blackmail her by threatening her father. If you want a stellar example of toxic masculinity, this is it. Number 2, Edward Cullen from Twilight. He breaks into her house to watch her sleep. He is constantly talking about how he could easily kill her and how he probably should kill her because vampire. Oh, and he's over 100 years old while she is a teenager. Someone call the cops now. Number 3, half the men of Game of Thrones. This series has some decent male characters. They might not be your favorite, but at least they're not actively trying to hurt anyone. And then we've got a whole slew of rapists, abusers, gaslighters, and just overall awful people, but especially men. And this is largely because of George R. Martin's specific criticism of patriarchal society, so it's not surprising. You got Joffrey for obvious reasons. Walder Frey rules his family with fear and bitterness. Everyone named Bolton. And need I remind you, Khal Drogo raped Daenerys multiple times. He also encouraged his men to rape their prisoners of war, civilians, until she told him otherwise. Hey, their romance eventually might have been really sweet and cute, but he was no bueno. Number 4, John Walker. Spoilers, by the way, for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Skip ahead to this timestamp if you're trying to avoid those. Now, John Walker, aka the new Captain America, disregards the opinions and thoughts of everyone who disagrees with him. His going guns blazing approach actually costs them the chance to diplomatically find a peaceful resolution with the Flag Smashers. And oh yeah, he beat a man to death with the Captain America shield. Oh, but he had just lost his best friend. I don't care! His murder victim was unarmed, unarmored, begging for mercy, and also wasn't even the guy who killed Leonard. And then he blames Sam and Bucky for trying to take the shield away rather than owning up to his mistakes. Why are you making me doing this? He screams after committing at least 2 felonies of his own volition. Now, he does manage something of a redemption arc in the last episode. He physically turns away from violence and towards heroism. But I was left feeling very uncomfortable when in the last episode our final scene with him is seeing him in the US agent costume and being told that, he's going to be going back into superheroing. Now, I am not familiar with the Marvel comics at all, so I actually had to look up, is US agent a villain, good guy or bad guy? And what I found was that, first of all, the John Walker of the comics has a very long, extensive resume. He's like 12 different superheroes. And I say that term very loosely here because he spends just as much time fighting with and for the Avengers X-Men as he does fighting against them. So I guess it depends on the day of the week for him. Watching the Dora Milaje just beat him into the ground was just... While we're in the Marvel Universe, number 5, Loki. Sure, the guy killed a few thousand people in the first Avengers movie, but he's hot, so we're gonna give him more love and attention than Thor. He has betrayed, belittled, and tried to kill his brother how many times now? It's okay though, because daddy issues. Odin's bad parenting decisions here don't excuse shit. Again, we did get some semblance of a redemption arc around Thor 2 and 3, and a more positive trajectory for his familiar relationships at the end of Thor Ragnarok, before he, died. But that's not nearly enough to get him off the hook here. And if you think that all of this is going to prevent me from watching the show Loki when it comes out, you are absolutely wrong. I am going to binge that shit. Here's what I'm hoping for with the Loki television show. They're either A, going to do a redemption arc, or B, embrace the toxicity. One or the other. Remember, this Loki is starting right after trying to take over New York. Like, he has just grabbed the Tesseract, and so it's not the same Loki that we saw in Thor's 2 and 3. This is a different, more evil person. So he's either going to have a long, bitter road of redemption, or we're going to get a Rick and Morty situation where the protagonist is condemned in canon for all of his horrible behavior, and we're not necessarily rooting for him to succeed. Speaking of which, number 6, Rick and Morty from Rick and Morty. Actually, the entire Sanchez family is awful. I know this list is supposed to be guys only, but we gotta kind of talk about everyone here. Rick is a manipulative alcoholic sociopath. Beth's abandonment issues jeopardizes her family on more than one occasion. John is a cowardly leech, and Summer is a straight-up bitch. Morty is probably the most moral character out of that family, and he is a pervert who tried to date rape his crush and accidentally destroyed the whole world as a consequence. It's a long story. But that is actually one of the reasons why I like this show. Their toxicity is almost always punished. Unlike some examples of toxic men on this list, these characterizations are all done on purpose. The show doesn't work if the Sanchez family is healthy and functional. Half the time we're not even supposed to root for them. We're just supposed to watch them dig themselves into a deeper hole and cope with dark humor. They are all very self-aware, both the writers and the characters. Rick owns his dysfunction, and all the characters call each other out when they cross a line. Some of them even try to improve. As of season 4, Beth has actively been pushing for less toxicity and healthier coping mechanisms, standing up to her father and getting everyone to attend therapy. I find that surprisingly hopeful and encouraging in such a nihilistic, cynical show. Number 7, Tate Langdon from American Horror Story. Anyone remember season 1 of AHS? Back when the show was actually good? Season 1 is Haunted House, and it seems like every meme or artboard from that season I saw was sympathizing with or romanticizing Tate. He raped a woman and then seduced her teenage daughter. This was after he killed a bunch of people in a school shooting, by the way. The plus side is that the show punishes him. As soon as Violet learns what he did, she shuts him down. The season finale has him taking the first steps toward redemption, apologizing, and then waiting in the wings for when, more likely if, Violet's ready to take him back. It's not about whether or not he regrets his actions. He does. It's about whether or not his victims are ready to face him again. Most of my frustration about this one is on the fans who thinks he's a precious baby boy who does no wrong. He did plenty wrong. Number 8, Frodo from Lord of the Rings. This one is controversial. It is not, strictly speaking, Frodo's fault when he treats Sam like garbage in the last half of their journey. It's the influence of the One Ring poisoning him. He still acts toxic, but it's not his fault that he's being toxic, since as soon as the ring is destroyed, he snaps back to not that asshole. This is the same with Boromir. They still have to own their behavior and take responsibility for their actions, manipulation or no, but the guilt lies with the ring, not them. I get very frustrated with articles and boards that list Frodo as a toxic male character, but don't address this. Number 9, Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars. If your wife breaks up with you after you murder a bunch of children, it's not her. The whole prequel trilogy is basically about Anakin's growing toxicity as he slides further into the dark side, so this is definitely on purpose. Unlike the last man on our list. Number 10, Han Solo from Star Wars. I'm sorry, but we gotta talk about this. Han has a lot of issues, but his biggest one is probably his treatment of Leia. He does not say one nice thing to her or about her until after they have started dating, which actually makes it worse. I'm gonna be incredibly mean and hostile toward you until you have sex with me. Only then will I start treating you like an actual human being. Or you could treat her like a human being from the start. This is an attitude shared by a lot of men, real and fictional. They think that they don't have to treat women as equals unless they're related to them or banging him. It's one of the biggest hallmarks of toxic masculinity, treating women like shit until they sleep with you. And even then, another major hallmark of toxic masculinity is domestic violence, so having Han treat Leia so crappily, almost as a way of flirting, that just reinforces this bullshit. Honestly, I know I said in my How to Write a Romantic Subplot video that I was really sick and tired of seeing couples break up in sequels because of drama, but I was glad that Leia and Han broke up by the time The Force Awakens came around, because wow, she could have done so much better. Those are my 10 examples of toxic men from science fiction and fantasy. If I missed one, feel free to share them in the comments. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and join us on Patreon. That link is in the description. Bye, lovelies!